start. Uh, so basically today we'll just be exploring how we can monitor our nodes. At least so far we've been able to understand how we can have our um, full Ethereum node running by installing the clients, consensus clients, and the execution clients. So now we'll talk about how you can monitor the performance of your node, how you need to know if um, how you need to view logs, how you need to check the uptime, things you also need to check out for when troubleshooting your nodes. So we are going to look through all of this, and I'm going to share my screen um, right away. Previously, I remember when Casey Pele was talking about when he was putting you guys through setting up your nodes using Ret and Lighthouse. So he was also navigating, like showing you some dashboards, showing you some like you see synced, you see your network name, Holiski, you'll be seeing different things around your node, more like in a dashboard format. So um, normally when you set up your node, you don't have those things. You have to like configure your setup in in that way, so you'll be able to view uh, have more like an overview of your node's performance. And by looking at the dashboard, you can know the state of your validator node, the sync mode. If it is active, you will also see the network you're connected to, amongst other important information. So today we'll just be exploring the theoretical part of it. Then in our next session, we'll go deeper into the the practical aspect of it, where you will see how these things are being installed or configured, the key things you have to pay close attention to. So basically, or for this slide, I'll be talking about Prometheus and Grafana, and they are basically tools, more like a dual tool that help you to set up your so that you can add to your node, so you can monitor the health and performance basically of your infrastructure. So um, Prometheus is an open source monitoring tools. So basically, it helps to collect data and store them in a time series manner. So all the data that will be coming from your node through the log, it has a way of mapping that data with respect to time, so that you know what is happening in real time. So it gathers metrics from your application, your node, or your system, whatever setup you want to monitor, and then save them with timestamp to track the changes that occur. So yeah, basically it just helps you to it stores the data in a time series manner, so that you be able to track changes that occur over time. So It has its own built-in database that efficiently handles large amount of data, and this allows for quick retrieval when needed. And it uses a pull model which actively requests data from your node, and and this happens in regular interval. So it doesn't really rely on your node to push that data. So it has a way of getting the data itself. So, and this approach basically ensures consistency in data collection, and it also has a tool that helps you to query this data. Um, it, so it enables you to like ask specific questions about your data and retrieve answers in a useful format. So that's the prompt query. And so this is more like the tool that gets the data, and then Grafana is more like a visualization tool. So it's more like something that presents you the visual, the charts, you know, it presents you'll be seeing the visuals basically, the charts, the lines, all those things um, that basically represent the flow of data. So Grafana is basically the visualization tool, and it's a web-based tool designed to visualize data collected by Prometheus and other data sources. So basically, we are just saying, so you can actually use it on other data sources, um, and it basically transforms raw data into clear and easy to understand charts and graphs on customizable dashboards. And this dashboard basically allows you to monitor critical metrics like your node uptime, the CPU usage. Another important metrics are about your node, if it's active or not, the sync status. So, and all of this happens at a glance. So you just need to look at the dashboard and have like an overview of the current state of your node. And you can also set up alert capabilities, which would then notify you if something happens. So let's say if your node is down, or maybe something happens and your node isn't syncing. So you could also configure it in such a way that you get notified when things like that happens. So this would also help you to stay at alert, to also be informed when issues arises. So it basically helps in escalation. So how do they work? They actually work together. Um, so the Prometheus basically collects the data and store them, while Grafana just displays the data. It just visualizes it for you. And by connecting the two, you can create a very powerful and useful dashboard that offers real-time insights into the performance and health of your node. So it's a useful tool. And so from in our next class, we are going to see how we can install some of these things, or some of these configure these tools basically. And so for some clients, they already made it easier, so they can just provide a flag that you can just provide certain endpoints, um, or link to where your node is running, and then where yeah, basically. So you just, with the flag, you can connect, you can um, paste the link, or maybe the local host or something that just points to your data. So some of those clients already made it easier. It's just for you to configure it by providing those data, or filling up those flags in the command line, and you have your setup properly configured to monitor the performance of your node. So to get more information on how to like install the setup and build your first dashboard, you can check the official link. So I can also drop this on the chat. So yeah, basically, and then the configuration. So once you so you can yeah so you also configure Prometheus to collect data from your desired system by defining targets, so which are like IP addresses or URL of your system. So for your node, if your node is already running on a particular endpoint, you just need to provide that endpoint, map it to the flag from the client you're running, and then you'll be able to monitor your node. So this will then enable data collection, and basically your node then exposes the metric in the proper format for Prometheus to understand. And yeah, and so for your node, you also need the Node Explorer. Uh, so all of this you would see more information on this uh, exporter rather. You get more information on this when we look into it in detail in the next class. So in Grafana, you add Prometheus as data source by providing the URL to your Prometheus server. So once connected, you can create custom dashboard to display the metrics collected by Prometheus, such as your CPU usage, memory usage, network traffic, and all of this. Right. So and and it also offers pre-built dashboard templates for you to leverage. And yeah, some of the things you can monitor are CPU usage. So how much of your node CPU is being utilized. So all of these things you would see it on the dashboard. The memory usage, you also see it. You see the RAM capacity and how much has been how it is being used. You also see how you can also track your disk IOs. So track how much data is being read from and written to your disk. And then the network traffic, you also be able to see it, and your node status, if it is active or not. And some common issues that you're most likely to encounter is if your node is like you're not if you're not being connected. So like your node is not connecting. So if the node basically is not sending data to Prometheus, then you need to check for network problem. You also need to check if your ports are opened and if they are allowing for incoming requests. So that you check the firewall rules if it's blocking any communication, and also the DNS settings. So all of these things are things you need to like ensure um, take note of to make sure that the connection is established. And in terms of your node missing attestation, so this is basically around your node and the network. So if so, we'll still explore more on this in the next slide. So, but basically, if you're missing important data or network problem might be causing delay. So let's say certain configuration is missing or certain data is missing, you not have the right format, and possibly your network might also be delaying. So there could be this latency around it. So you need to check for your network connection between your node and Prometheus to ensure that they are communicating properly. So basically around the configuration file or the configuration setup, and once you have that sorted out, you are good to go in terms of connecting your node to Prometheus. Um, so I'm also going to so with this understanding, we with this uh with this explanation, you'll be able to like have a broader overview understanding of how these things work. And then in subsequent class, that's when you have like a hands-on experience about this. So I'm going to share another slide where we then talk about some of the common issues you can have when running or setting up your node, things around how you can troubleshoot and also optimize the performance of your node so you be earning your maximum reward. So I'm going to pull up that slide, and if you have any question you can feel free to ask based on what has been shared so far.
Hello, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, the two tools that we got introduced to tonight, are they bundled together into one one
no
app,
you
or how
no
should I
you
get it?
no you install them, like you can install them differently on your, like there are like different command, but they work together to set them up. All right, so let's go to the other slide. So let me know if you can see my slide.
Yes, yes.
All right, great. So let's move on. So for this slide, we'll basically be talking about some of the issues you'll be having or you're most likely to face uh, when setting up your validator or when your validator is running. And sometimes even everything basically I believe requires maintenance. So things way off with time. They do weigh out with time. So same thing goes to machines, right? And even your node. Sometimes you're required to upgrade the software and um, yeah, the software basically. So uh, so this slide basically talks about how you can troubleshoot some of these issues and also optimize your node performance so that you earn more. Uh, So a lot of times people have issues with their node not syncing properly, and there are a couple of things that are responsible for this. So in terms of uh, synchronization, so synchronization is just basically your node being up to date with the network, so that if there's any incoming request, your node is aware that if there's any incoming transaction, your node is aware that yeah, there's something new, and it participates in consensus, in attestation, in blog proposals as well. So just being in sync, right? So that's basically what it means. So and sometimes, especially for new nodes coming into the network, they might have issues synchronizing with existing peers or finding peers in the network. So first, you need to ensure that your network is stable and strong. That's like one. You also need to make sure your setup is, your softwares are up to date, the clients are the latest one. You also need to make sure that your ports are accessible. If you're using firewall or you set up any rule, you need to make sure that your node isn't having issues um, receiving connections. So you need to make sure that the ports, especially the port that is responsible for peer discovery, and for that's the 3033, that's 30303, and that's like uh, port for the execution client. So basically the execution client uses I even in our previous classes we usually, okay, maybe we like we've not really talked about it in details, but um the port 3033 is basically like the 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 port for the execution client, which helps in communicating with other network peers. And there's also port for the consensus client as well, and that's like 9,000. And well, also depending on the client as well, right? So there's also the TCP port and the UDP ports. And well, more into all of this eventually. But what you should know is that there are some ports that has to be open for your node to be able to communicate with other nodes in the network. And some of these ports are important, especially for peer discoveries, where your node, will be able to find peers or basically connect to boot nodes. So, and for the execution clients, it's the 3030 three. I think I have it here. So yeah, basically more into that as we go on. And um, there's also your disk space problem, where so sometimes some people make use of HDD. That's like the hard disk drive. So it's not like it can't do the job. It can, but there are just it's preferably to use the solid state drive because they are they make use of flash memory, and this is super important for faster data access and transfers. Um, basically, so SSD is preferably, and it just makes the the access, your access to data faster. And it also makes it easier for you to, you know, transfer data. So basically, read and write. I think that's the word. So yeah, that's just it around the SSD and HDD. Um, yeah, HDD. So I wanted to say HDD drive, but is it's already hard disk drives. So yeah, that's just it. So you can also set up when you're having issues around this. You can also set up alerts to notify you when the disk space is getting low, or when it is being performing too much, when it has very little space left. And if you're running a full node, it is recommendable to have like 1 terabyte and above. And especially for someone who is running an archive node that has like all the transaction history. So you the idea here is that when you're having issues, most times it could be that you're using the HDD and maybe it's low. You don't have sufficient disk space. So that's when these issues usually arise. And there's also the resource allocation part, where sometimes you'll be having issues around the maybe your node will just shut down for some reason. So that was because your machine doesn't have like enough RAM to handle some of those running processes. So and also at least two CPU cores, preferably four. So um, and you should also close any. Ideally, it's better you just have a dedicated system for your node. Right, so it's not like you'll be using your node for other program also like running other things, using it for development and a couple of other things that you do personally. So it's recommendable to like have a dedicated um, system or device for your node. So in terms of also around connectivity, around connecting with peers. So like I said before, you need to make sure your ports are open. The ports need to, be forwarding requests to the appropriate ports. Your node basically needs to be forwarding requests to the appropriate ports and at the right time. So ensure it is open. For the execution client, basically use this 3033 for peer-to-peer connection. And if you have any firewall rule around your network, you should ensure that it is allowing incoming requests. So that's it. So I was actually mentioning some things around um, execution client ports and consensus client ports. So but yeah, for the execution client is this port, but for consensus clients, basically uses the 9000 for communication with other network peers and um, so there's the TCP and the TCP port and the UDP port as well, and that's the 13,000 and 12,000 ports respectively. So I think during the setup we'll see some of these things, and although in some setups, in some clients that you'll be installing, you might not really have to like do some of these things because they already have these things, like their configuration allows that these ports are open, so you might not really see these things. Um you you might not really have to like go through this process of opening it or setting it up yourself, because sometimes you run this thing through Docker and just very little you know configuration that you just have to do. So but that's that about opening your ports being open, because that helps in um, network connectivity. And in terms of latency also, you need to make sure that there's no latency between your node and other nodes. Your node is responding fast, synchronizing and performing as usual. It is receiving information as at when needed. It is sending it back. It's syncing properly in real time. So once it receives a ping from other nodes, it responds and send back things like that. So and the anytime lag should should be addressed. You need to make sure that there is no latency around this, and that's where you need to pay attention to your node, to also your the kind of drive that you're using. So network actually plays a very big role here, because if it's not stable and if it's not strong enough, you'll be having issues a lot. So network is a big thing. What are the best practices for validators uptime? So sometimes when your node goes off, or maybe when there is an error or something and your node shuts down, you would need to like manually set up those, like run those commands again to start up your node. But if you're using a systemd service file or Docker, it makes it easier in terms of automatically restarting your node when it goes down or when it crashes. So you need to like set up these files. If you're setting up your node yourself, you can set up a systemd service file that makes it easier for your node to start off immediately your system comes back on, immediately you boot your system. Or you can also do that using Docker. So sometimes when you're following documentation from all those clients, you would also see some of these things. So yeah, that's that about the automatic restart. And in terms of your security, because a lot of times you can get slash if you're running two validators, like if you're running the same validator in different machines, and that's basically, if you're not aware, it could be that your validator key is being compromised. So, but if that's not the case, maybe you were running your validator on one machine, something happened, you now got another machine, you took that same validator key to set up the validator on the new machine without knowing that the other one is still participating in the network, you could get slash for that. So in terms of your security key management, you need to ensure that they are properly backed up in a way that other people don't have access to it, and it is backed up in a place where you can easily access it. And you should also make sure that you don't have your validator key running in different machines. So you can also use hardware wallets too. You can store backup in encrypted formats. And you can also have redundant setups where you have another node as backup. So in case one goes down, you use the other one for to come back, to restore um, your validator back to the network. So redundant setup also is important, particularly for home stakers. So yeah, and setting up monitoring tools. We talked about Prometheus and Grafana. So this would also help you to escalate issues once they arise, so that you can take up the
Actually,
necessary. Okay.
sorry to cut you. Right. I think I've done something as regards Grafana. Right. That's on using Loki to like monitor my but
Use.
having it using Loki as the data scraper to like send the data to Grafana instead of Prometheus. Right. That was what I did. But yet it wasn't on Node. Right. It was just a normal Web2 application. Right.
Okay.
So the question is, um, having noted with all of this, right? Does it in any way gives you an heads up on when you're being chosen as a validator?
Okay. Like when you're choosing to
Validate a
propose block
transaction or
or validate
propose it?
transaction.
Does
Okay.
it alert in any way? Does it notify you in any way?
So I'm trying to think of the metric that you can use, more like a trigger for that. I think your best bet. I think the best way to like run through this is to check what's it called, beacon char. So beacon char, I think I should have. So beacon chart is more like, so for Holisky now you can check your, it kind of like give you an overview of your validator. So then I think you can also check for important metrics around that and then see how you can map it. Just having like a trigger to Grafana, so that once that particular thing is being triggered, then it tells you that your validator is has been selected to um, to to propose block or to validate transactions. So I'll probably share a link to that beacon chart. So you just check the validator. So I think that would like give you, so that would also help you to like know some things around validator. So for this one now, this is for a particular validator. Okay, let me share this part of my screen. So I just opened
Uh,
the dashboard and I saw this for this particular validator. So from here now you can see the reward from the validator. You see the that, okay, this is like when the deposit was made, then after deposited it will then pen for some time before getting into the network becomes activated. So if um so for attestations now, you can see for this is the slot and this is the epoch. So this happened like 3 minutes ago, and it usually happens when this particular validator is being selected to attest particular transaction. So if you can also check on how you can get this as a trigger. So once there is any attestation, it then triggers or notify you that, yeah, this is not happening at the same time. So basically, once this gets a data, I think that should like give you an overview.
okay, so with this dashboard right now, right? I'm just a little bit curious. Does it mean that this person has not defaulted at any point? Because I'm seeing the 100% good effectiveness.
Okay, this good is telling you the performance of the. So another way you can check. So okay, well, I think this person has been performance of this person has been good. So sometimes you would see here will be showing red or negative. But let me see the last transaction. Okay, it's yeah, for this person, the last transaction is this, and the person has only been receiving rewards, no slashing. And as you can also see from here, this is disabled. So it means that for this validator has not been slashed, and this is like the reward the validator has received. Yeah. So
Okay.
so yeah, basically that's it.
And in order for you not to be slashed, right? If let's say you don't want to be active, is there a way you can like sign up for something that you're not available for validating or proposing?
Yeah, you can exit. There's also like a command for that, like how you can exit. So,
Mm.
but
Uh,
once you exit, this place will be showing green. So back to this. Yeah. So yeah, we've talked around this. Then, so what are some of the things you can do so that you don't have to like miss attestations? Now you need to, okay, I just showed you guys the cha, and that's like another good place for you to track the status of your validator, to know when it is active, when it's not active, and things like that. So if your the thing is, if your node goes off, it doesn't immediately get slashed until certain number of times. So that's why you need to like act fast, and you it's also important for you to have those setups that will then trigger that there's a downtime or there's something wrong for you to act immediately. So, but yeah, you can use the beacon chart to check for your validator health, and your network should be very stable. Just like I said, the network plays a very big role in your node, and you also need to like set up alerts for systems once there's any issue. So if maybe you miss first attestation, you can have a trigger for that that notifies you. So basically, these are like basic things you can do to handle miss attestations. And then talking about slashing risk. So you basically be slashed. Slashing is them taking certain percentage or certain amount of the ETH that you deposited. So they'll just take some because you violated or you did something bad. Uh, so the network doesn't want to know if it's your power that goes off, if it's your RAM that got crashed or something. It doesn't really care about that. So it just need you to perform your duty as at when needed. So if you receive any request, you respond to it. So, but another thing around slashing is that, for instance, it could be like it's not like you intentionally want to run, you want to have your valid have different validators, have the same validators running in different machine. It could just be maybe something happened and then one got crashed, and then you now have to like move the validator key into another setup without even knowing that that one is still running or still participating in the network. So you also need to check the beacon chart to check if your node is active or not. But the best practice to that is just make sure you don't have your validator keys running on the same validator keys running on two different or two or more machines, because that way, if you have the same validator key participating in the network, there is a tendency that that same validator will be asked to perform to sign transaction twice. Like there's this tendency of it being called twice, and that's where you now need to like sign transaction two times. And that's where the concept of double signing comes in, and you then be slashed. So you need to ensure that you don't have that setup. And then, so extended downtime is basically, so as soon as your node goes off, it doesn't go offline. Let's say your system shut down now, it doesn't immediately go off the network. So it will stay for some time. So, but you need to make sure it doesn't last for too long, because once it stays offline for too long, that's where you would be slashed. So you just need to make sure that you respond immediately and have everything sorted out. In terms of synchronization, if your node is not in sync, let's say something happened, maybe your node goes offline and for some reason you're not catching up with the recent transaction, so you will not be able to be performing your duty on the recent transactions. So that's an issue around syncing. So you need to sync fast. You need to you can use Snap Sync. So there are like different ways you can sync to with the network faster. So once you have that, you are then able to catch up with the most recent transaction and then perform your duties without having issues or without having to sign an incorrect block or block that is conflicting. But that's just around the syncing part. But most times it's because if your node is already synced into the network and you're not having issues with syncing it, either your network went down or something just happened that you're not catching up with recent transactions. So you need to like sync it fast, like resync basically, so you can catch up with the recent transaction and then start performing without having issues with other validators in terms of signing conflicting blocks, transactions in blocks. So, and also around the security breaches, um, so I also said some things around this. So you need to make sure you secure your validator key so that someone else doesn't have access to it. Because if I have your validator key, I can also decide to have that validator key running in another machine, and that's a problem. Um, or I can also steal your whatever you deposited, or I can take you off the network and withdraw your funds. So yeah, that's it around the security part. Then last, okay, then how can you like optimize hardware for maximum reward? So um having the required memory capacity, the required storage is important because that will then determine the performance of your node, which then um also determine the reward you get, so you don't get slashed. So it should just be like you getting rewards and not being slashed for issues due to your hardware. So you need to make sure you have the your requirements meets these recommendable requirements. So and also in terms of your network, you need to make sure you're using a stable network at possibly Starlink or um, fiber optic, something around that, right? That will just give you that low latency. And then yeah, yeah, the hardware basically you need to make sure your RAM um, is sufficient, your CPU capacity is optimal, and using SSD also. We also talked around all of this. So okay, yeah. So synchronization modes and performance tuning. So you also choose. Let's say if something happens to your node now, you need to catch up. You need to catch up with you need to make sure your node catches up with the network history. Then you need to use the right sync mode or method. So that's basically when your node is behind or struggling to catch up with the recent transactions in the network. So that's you can use fast sync. I think that's like the one that is faster, or snap. So yeah, I think snap basically. So you also optimize your client settings. So So most of the times you'll be seeing some configurations. If you're using Docker, you need to do some configuration as well. So all of those client setups, there are some things you also need to configure based on your some parameters you need to configure specific to your hardware or to your device. So all of those things um, are things that you can also do, and also perform regular maintenance. So if your maybe your RAM is bad, you can change it, you can clean the disk, you can update the software, and a couple of other things you can also do to make sure that your node performs optimally. And then the so other things that you can do to speed up your work is automated monitoring. So we talked about Prometheus and Grafana. That's very important. You can decide to use cloud infrastructure if maybe you're staying in a very remote area where you're having issues with power or network connectivity. You could decide to use cloud infrastructures to host your server, your node. So that's also another way to curb some of these issues. And in terms of backup, it is very important to have redundant setup or systems to that then that you can utilize. So if so for instance, I think there's something I did for someone recently. His node, he has he has a node, an archive node, and that node is running uh like running a full history of the blockchain. So he was now looking for ways to run another node on mainnet. And so he has two nodes on it, but he now wants to like run another one, and he was now looking for ways to set up another one. Although he already has one that is synced already. One is not an archive node, and the other is an archive node, and he wants to set up another archive node. And the ecosystem that has that blockchain don't have a snap that is up to date. So I just told him to for that's his blockchain, that's his node that is running that has the archive node. Just get the the node data. So there's a folder called like a node folder where you have the chain data, you have the log and a couple of other important files around your node. So compress that file, you can then use it to basically the folder that has the data, all your transaction data. So you just need to like copy it into another device or another machine and use it to catch up with the transaction. But you would have to do it in a way that the data in it doesn't get corrupted or compromised. So you don't have issues syncing with the network. So that's like another way. In terms of having backup system, it is something you can do. If you don't want to like have if you want to like make it easier for you, you can also use your own node data and sync another node, like make the synchronization process faster. It's still the same syncing as we all know it. So but basically you now you're not doing it from your own data, and that's it. So basically that's all in today's session, and if you have any question can ask. Okay, so what I said about snap is snapshots basically. So if you have like a node that is fully synced, you can generate a snapshot from that your node and use it on another to set up another node so it will catch up with the network faster instead of having to like do a fresh sync with the blockchain. So actually it depends on the blockchain you're trying to catch up with. So if the blockchain ecosystem do not have a snapshot, a recent snapshot that you can sync from, Then you can use your own if you have one that is already up to date. You basically use yours. Just compress the data, make it in such a way that it's transferable. Then you can sync with it faster on your own node. So that's basically what I said about snaps. So I guess there are no further questions. And if you have any other questions, you can still reach out to me on Telegram um, channel. So guys, I think that's all for now. See you in the next class.